As DR Congo celebrates the 50th anniversary of its independence, the country is currently ranked 176 out of 182 on the UNDP Human Development Index. 1 in 3 children are not able to go to school, malnutrition is widespread, and there is a serious lack of health care. The humanitarian and human rights situation in the east of the country remains dire. An estimated 5.4 million people have lost their lives since 1998, most of them from preventable diseases. Almost 500,000 Congolese refugees have fled to neighboring countries, and over 2 million people have been made homeless in their own country. In 2009, the government of the DRC, with international backing, launched military offensives against the FDLR and other militias in eastern Congo with devastating humanitarian consequences. An estimated 900,000 people were displaced, and over 1,400 documented civilian deaths were attributed to militia and government forces. In 2010, a new offensive, Amani Leo, or Peace Today, continues efforts to disarm the militias with some additional safeguards for civilian safety linked to UN peacekeeping support for the operations. However, while some areas have become safer as a result, the ongoing population displacement, including over 164,000 displaced in the first 4 months of 2010 alone, and reported violations of human rights, which have increased by 246% in January and February of this year in South Kivu, are indications of continuing fallout for civilians. Reforming the Congolese security sector and turning the national army and police into disciplined, professional entities, respectful of human rights and able to protect the population, is fundamental to preventing abuses and to achieving stability in the country. Unfortunately, interviews with community members demonstrates that armed forces continue to be seen as a net violator of human rights. In surveys conducted between 2007 and 2009 by Oxfam and its partners, 93% of communities surveyed could cite instances of abuses by the FARDC against the population, whereas only 29% could cite instances of the army performing its function of protecting civilians against the armed groups who prey upon them. In spite of this, nearly 1 in 3 people we spoke with felt that the army could be a solution to the violence, coercion, and extortion that many experience on a daily basis, underlying just how important the reform of the military is. The EU has a key role to play. EU policymakers are currently studying the role of the USEC and UPOL missions in DRC as part of mandate renewal discussions. These 2 missions, despite their modest mandates and resources, have achieved some notable accomplishments despite numerous obstacles. In addition to these 2 missions, the EU has allocated 961 million euros of development assistance through the European Commission to the DRC since 2002. The EDF country strategy paper for 2008 to 2013 allocates 561.7 million euros, which is one of the largest allocations to a single country in this period, and is directed towards key areas which have an impact on the protection of civilians, including governance, democracy, human rights, and gender equality. The challenge to the Congolese government and its international partners, including the EU, is to find a way to control the violence against civilians in a context where militia groups continue to mushroom, yet the security services are very often more a source of abuse than a defense against it. In facing that challenge, they must understand and act on the priorities of the communities directly affected. I will now discuss a few key findings before moving on to recommendations. Oxfam's most recent survey, conducted with 12 NGO partners in 24 communities in North and South Kivu in April of this year, inquired into the experiences of more than 800 people in areas affected by the military operations. It found that for 60% of our respondents, things are worse this year than last. Human rights abuses were reported everywhere, committed by the FDLR.
Now you really must slow down a little bit.
I'm sorry again.
I hear that you're not translated properly.
Human rights abuses were reported everywhere, committed by the FDLR and other militias in almost 80% of the communities surveyed, and by undisciplined soldiers in 96%. Residents in every single community were subject to looting, and women and girls were subject to rape in all but one community. Sexual violence was reported to be on the increase in 20 out of 24 communities consulted. Those who suffer most are women, with 75% of those consulting saying they felt less safe than last year, and boys and young men, with 65% saying they felt less safe than last year. But everyone loses. Humiliation, pain, and poverty are the dividends of war for whole communities, and the lack of adequate provision for many of the soldiers sent to fight on their behalf compounds the insecurity for civilians. Operation Amanileo was very widely blamed for much of the insecurity. 3/4 of communities surveyed were against continuing the military action, calling instead for a political resolution to the conflict. While respondents in some areas reported that the offensive since 2009 had given welcome relief from the FDLR by forcing them away from population centers and diminishing the threat they pose to civilians, the bigger picture which emerges is one of greater insecurity for civilians. As in 2009 with the Khmer II offensive, there are indications that the violence against civilians follows the movement of the military operations. In the south of South Kivu, a focus of Amanileo at the time of the survey, 99% of women and 100% of boys and young men said they faced greater insecurity than last year, with abuses such as looting and murder on the increase since the end of last year. It is clear from the findings of our surveys that security cannot be measured solely by numbers of militia combatants who are disarmed or by territory captured. Security, as experienced by sections of the civilian population we surveyed, has continued to deteriorate, and communities are crying out for alternatives to the cycle of abuse, attacks, and reprisals. 18 months on, the forced disarmament operations that are intended to bring peace today in reality continue to create conditions in which civilians in the areas of deployment, and particularly women and children, suffer unremitting abuse from all sides. Deploying the FARDC and police without adequate provision for their pay, welfare, and equipment virtually guarantees abuse against civilians. Yet positive reports from a number of locations confirm the difference that effective discipline can produce in soldiers' conduct and demonstrates the potential for improved protection performance from the National Army. Accordingly, the EU, in coordination with the government of DRC and the rest of the international community, should prioritize the following. First, focus reform efforts on the changes that communities say will directly improve their safety. 1. Improving pay and welfare provision for soldiers. 2. Garrisoning and logistics support. 3. Discipline and justice to improve accountability. And 4. Training in human rights. With respect to pay and welfare, despite the suffering inflicted on the communities concerned, a remarkable 2/3 of Oxfam interviewees recognized that the poor pay and conditions of soldiers and their dependents were probably a key factor in their abusive behavior. While offering no justification for violent crimes such as rape or beatings, most respondents saw the parlous pay and conditions of FARDC soldiers as inevitably contributing to widespread economic crimes such as extortion and looting. Indeed, an FARDC officer interviewed deplored the looting by his men, but asked how he could be expected to stop them if they had nothing to eat. The census of the Army and the Chain of Payments program, which has been set up by USEC, have been credited with securing significant pay increases for soldiers in recent years. By eliminating ghost soldiers from the payroll and ensuring wages reach the people they are intended for. However, even with the pay rise, a private is earning just over $1 per day. Given a typical family of 5 to support, the wages are closer to 27 US cents per person per day. Moreover, even these pitiful wages are frequently paid several months in arrears. Second recommendation, while the UN mission has an important role in sustained monitoring of the FARDC's conduct, more is needed for military justice to take hold in the longer term. Specifically, the Congolese government and international partners such as the EU should increase provision for more effective, accountable, and widespread deployment of military police.
Excuse me, you're speaking too fast and you're exceeding your speaking time because we need to spare time for discussion.
Prosecution supports. The third, there's just 2 more recommendations. The third is addressing the checkpoints that communities highlight as a widespread opportunity for abuse can achieve an immediate improvement in civilian protection. Accordingly, military and civilian authorities should remove checkpoints serving no specific security purpose and put an end to extortion at those that remain. Fourth, non-military efforts to disarm the militias, including through expanding political space in Rwanda and delivering on integration promises, should be stepped up. Finally, while operations continue, the Congolese military authorities should give clear directives to all forces to enforce respect for the status of all non-combatants and monitor their application to avoid civilians being targeted for abuse on the pretext that they are collaborators with the various militia groups. This month, as the EU considers its continuing role in the DRC, it must listen to the voices of Congolese civil society and Congolese civilians, who are calling for urgent efforts to secure their security and their dignity. While the primary responsibility for civilian protection lies with the Congolese government, unflagging support from the international community, including the EU, are also essential so that the DRC can emerge as a strong, democratic, and rights-respecting state able to support itself and protect its people.
Thank you very much.